Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before we go any further, I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine a woman who hasn't texted you all day. No message, no call, no reaction to your story, nothing. On the surface, it feels like silence, like distance, like maybe she's slowly forgetting you. But what if I told you that sometimes silence is not absence? Sometimes silence is pressure. Pressure from emotions she's trying very hard not to reveal. Because here's something many men never realize. When a woman misses you too much, when the feelings start becoming overwhelming, when your absence begins echoing in her mind, she doesn't always run toward you. Sometimes she hides. Not because she doesn't care, but because she cares more than she wants you to know. And if you've ever felt confused by a woman's sudden distance, if you've ever wondered why she watches your stories but rarely reaches out, if you've ever felt like something is there between you, but she refuses to say it out loud, then this conversation might change how you see everything. So before we dive deeper, take 1 second to subscribe and like the video if you enjoy learning the deeper psychology behind attraction, emotions, and relationships. It helps the channel grow, and it tells me you want more conversations like this. Now let's talk about something most men misread completely. When a woman misses you deeply, the emotion is rarely simple. For men, missing someone often leads to action. You text, you call, you show up. But for many women, powerful emotions trigger caution. They start thinking, what if he doesn't feel the same way? What if I look too needy? What if I lose control? So instead of expressing the feeling directly, she starts controlling it. And that's where the confusion begins. Because from your perspective, her behavior suddenly feels inconsistent. One day she's warm, the next day she's distant. One moment she seems interested, the next moment she pulls away. But underneath that push and pull is often one simple truth. She misses you more than she's comfortable admitting. And the first sign of this hidden emotion is subtle, almost invisible. Most men overlook it completely, yet once you see it, you'll never unsee it again. It shows up in the way she watches you from a distance, while pretending she's perfectly fine without you. And that's where the real story begins. One of the first signs she misses you deeply but is hiding it is something so quiet that most men dismiss it as coincidence. She keeps appearing in your world, without truly stepping into it. Maybe she watches your social media stories within minutes. Maybe she likes something you posted hours later. Maybe she reacts occasionally, but never enough to start a conversation. To an untrained eye, it looks casual, but psychologically, it's something else entirely. It's controlled proximity. When someone misses you, their brain naturally looks for small ways to feel connected again. But if she's trying to hide those feelings, she won't come directly toward you. Instead, she stays just close enough to see you, without revealing how much she cares. Think of it like standing outside a door instead of knocking. She's there, she's aware, she's paying attention, but she refuses to step inside. And here's the important part many men misunderstand. This behavior isn't random. It's emotional self-protection. When a woman feels that missing you might give you emotional power over her, she becomes careful. She monitors instead of reaching. She observes instead of speaking. She stays near your orbit, but avoids exposing the depth of what she feels. And sometimes, this quiet observation becomes a habit. You might notice she disappears for a few days, then suddenly interacts again. This doesn't mean she forgot about you. Often it means she tried to create distance, but curiosity pulled her back. Because when someone occupies space in your mind, complete disconnection becomes difficult. Her brain wants to know what you're doing, who you're with, whether you're moving on. Not because she's controlling, but because missing someone creates a subtle emotional tension. The mind seeks relief from that tension, and watching you, even from a distance, gives her a small sense of connection without forcing her to admit the truth. So if you've ever felt like she's quietly keeping an eye on your life while pretending she's detached, you're probably seeing the first crack in the emotional wall she's built. But this is only the beginning, because when a woman misses you too much, the next sign becomes far more confusing for most men. It's when she suddenly acts colder than usual. And paradoxically, That coldness can sometimes mean the exact opposite of what you think.
There's a moment many men experience that feels confusing, even frustrating. You reconnect with her after some time apart. Maybe you send a message, maybe you run into each other, maybe the conversation starts flowing again. But instead of warmth, she seems slightly colder than before. Shorter replies, a little more distant, less emotionally expressive. And your mind immediately jumps to the worst conclusion. She doesn't care anymore. But what if the opposite is true? Because when a woman misses you deeply, when your absence has actually affected her more than she expected, there's a strange psychological response that can appear. Emotional restraint. You see, when someone realizes they've been thinking about you more than they should, their first instinct isn't always to reveal it. Often their instinct is to regain control, and control requires distance. So instead of showing you how happy she is to hear from you, she tones it down. Instead of letting the conversation become too emotional, she keeps it neutral. Not because she doesn't feel anything, but because she feels too much. This is one of the most misunderstood emotional defenses in dating dynamics. A woman who feels emotionally exposed will sometimes protect herself by appearing calmer than she really is. It's like placing a lid on a boiling pot. From the outside, everything looks controlled, quiet, stable. But underneath, the emotion is still there. And sometimes, if you pay attention carefully, you'll notice tiny cracks in that control. Maybe she asks questions she didn't need to ask. Maybe she remembers small details about you. Maybe she laughs a little more than the moment required. These are moments where the emotional mask slips, because hiding feelings is exhausting. The mind can maintain it for a while, but the heart occasionally reveals itself. Another thing you might notice is that she seems curious about your life in subtle ways. Not directly, not obviously, but through small comments like, "So what have you been up to lately?" Or, "You seem busy these days." These aren't random questions, they're emotional probes. When someone misses you, they want reassurance that you still exist in their world, and that your life hasn't completely moved past them. But they ask carefully, because asking too directly might expose the truth. And the truth is simple. You've been on her mind more than she planned. But the next sign is even more revealing, because sometimes the way a woman hides missing you is by doing something that seems completely unrelated to you at all, yet it quietly revolves around you. And once you notice it, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Sometimes the strongest sign that she misses you is not what she says. It's what suddenly changes in her life. Men often expect missing someone to look obvious: messages, calls, emotional confessions. But human psychology rarely works that cleanly. Instead, emotions often leak through behavior. And when a woman is trying to hide how much she misses you, that emotion sometimes appears in subtle shifts you wouldn't immediately connect to her feelings. For example, she suddenly becomes more active online, posting more, sharing moments of her life, uploading pictures, thoughts, little glimpses into her day. At first glance, it looks normal. People post online all the time. But psychologically, this behavior can serve a deeper purpose: indirect communication. When someone misses you but doesn't want to message you directly, they may start expressing themselves in places where they know you might see it. It's not always conscious. Sometimes it's simply the mind searching for emotional release. Think about it like this. When feelings have nowhere to go, they look for alternative exits. And social platforms often become that outlet. You might notice she posts something that seems almost reflective. A quote about memories, a song lyric about distance, a picture from a place you once talked about. None of it directly mentions you, but somehow it feels connected. This doesn't mean every post is about you, but when someone is missing a person deeply, their thoughts naturally circle around shared experiences and emotional associations. And sometimes those thoughts appear publicly in small, coded ways. It's a safe method of expression. If you notice it, she can pretend it wasn't about you. If you don't notice it, she still releases the emotion. It's a psychological win either way. But the most interesting part is this. Even while she's expressing herself indirectly, she may still avoid direct communication with you. Why? Because indirect expression feels safer. It doesn't risk rejection.
It doesn't expose vulnerability, and it allows her to feel emotionally connected without admitting the truth out loud. Yet eventually, something inside her begins to push harder against the wall she built, because missing someone for too long creates emotional pressure, and pressure always looks for an escape. When that moment comes, you might notice a surprising shift. She finds small, almost accidental reasons to reach out to you again, and those reasons are rarely as random as they appear. Eventually, something interesting begins to happen. After keeping her distance, after observing quietly, after convincing herself she doesn't need to reach out, she suddenly finds a reason to talk to you again. But notice something carefully. The reason is rarely direct. She won't say, "I missed you." She won't say, "I've been thinking about you." Instead, the message might look casual. "Hey, I saw something that reminded me of you." Or maybe, "Random question, do you remember that place we talked about?" Sometimes it's even simpler. A reply to an old conversation, a reaction to something small, a comment that feels almost accidental. But psychologically, these moments are rarely accidents. They're emotional openings. When someone misses you but has been trying to hide it, they often search for what psychologists call a low-risk entry point. A reason to start communication that doesn't reveal the real motivation behind it. Because if the conversation goes well, she can continue talking. And if it feels awkward, she can retreat without feeling exposed. This is emotional strategy, not manipulation, just self-protection. She wants the connection, but she also wants to protect her pride. And if you pay attention to the energy of the conversation in these moments, you might notice something subtle. At first, the tone is neutral, light, almost casual. But if the conversation continues, the warmth slowly returns. Her replies become a little longer, the pauses between messages become shorter, the conversation stretches beyond the original excuse she used to start it. This shift happens because the emotional tension she was holding inside begins to relax. For a moment, she allows herself to feel the connection again. But here's the important part many men miss. Right when things start feeling comfortable again, she might disappear. Not because she lost interest, but because the emotional wall she built suddenly reminds her why it exists. Missing someone can make a person feel vulnerable, and vulnerability makes people cautious. So after reconnecting briefly, she may step back again. This push and pull confuses many men, but when you understand the psychology behind it, the pattern becomes clear. She's balancing two forces inside her, the desire to reconnect and the fear of revealing how much she actually cares. And when those two forces collide, the next sign appears. It's one of the most revealing behaviors of all, because it shows up not in what she says to you, but in how she reacts when she thinks you might be moving on. There's a moment that reveals more about hidden feelings than almost anything else. It happens when she senses, even slightly, that your attention might be going somewhere else. Maybe she sees you interacting with another woman. Maybe you mention being busy. Maybe your responses become a little slower than usual. And suddenly, something changes in her behavior. Not dramatically, but noticeably. She becomes more present, more responsive, more engaged than she was before. This shift is not coincidence. It's emotional awareness. When someone misses you but has been trying to suppress those feelings, the idea of losing your attention completely creates a powerful reaction inside the mind. Because while she may have convinced herself that distance was safe, the thought of you emotionally moving on introduces a new fear. Finality. Distance feels manageable when the connection still exists somewhere in the background. But the moment it feels like that connection could disappear permanently, the emotional system wakes up. Her mind starts asking questions she tried to avoid. Is he losing interest? Is he replacing me? Did I wait too long? These questions create urgency, and urgency changes behavior. You might suddenly notice her initiating conversations more often, or showing more interest in what you're doing, or responding faster than usual. Again, she may not openly admit what's happening emotionally, but the change in attention becomes visible. Because humans naturally move toward things they fear losing, even when pride tries to hold them back. But there's another detail hidden in this moment that many men overlook. Sometimes she won't compete directly. Instead of confronting the situation, she might subtly remind you of the connection you shared. She might bring up a memory, mention something personal, or return to conversations that once felt meaningful between you. These are emotional anchors, her way of quietly re-establishing presence in your mind. Not aggressively, not dramatically, just enough to remind you that the bond between you still exists. And when someone misses you deeply, those reminders become important, because they allow her to stay connected without openly confessing what she feels. But the most powerful sign she misses you too much is something far more personal. It appears in the way she remembers you. Not the obvious things, the small ones, the details most people would forget. And when that happens, the truth becomes very difficult to hide. There's something fascinating about memory when emotions are involved. When a person truly misses someone, their mind doesn't just remember the big moments, it remembers the details. Tiny things most people would overlook. And when a woman misses you more than she's willing to admit, those details start appearing in conversation in ways that feel almost surprising. You might mention something casually, and she responds with, "I remember you telling me that." Or she brings up a story you once shared months ago. Maybe she recalls your favorite music, a goal you talked about, or even a random opinion you expressed in passing. At first, it may seem small, but psychologically, memory works differently when emotions are involved. The brain tends to store information connected to people we feel strongly about. It's a natural mechanism. When someone occupies emotional space in your mind, the details connected to them become easier to recall. And here's the interesting part. She may not even realize she's revealing this, because remembering these details feels natural to her. But to you, it suddenly becomes clear that she's been paying far more attention than she ever admitted. Think about it. Most people forget casual conversations quickly, but when someone remembers the small things about you weeks or months later, it means your presence stayed with them longer than they expected. Those memories replayed in their mind, quietly, often when you weren't even there. And memory like that usually comes from emotional significance. But the way she reveals those memories is still careful. She won't say, "I've been thinking about you." Instead, she simply demonstrates it through awareness, through the way she remembers your preferences, your stories, your thoughts. And when you notice this pattern, it reveals something important. You've been living in her mental world, even while she tried to act distant. But the final sign is the one that often surprises men the most. Because eventually, when someone hides their feelings for too long, something inside them begins to shift. The emotional pressure becomes harder to contain, and in one unexpected moment, the truth almost escapes. When someone hides their feelings for a long time, something interesting begins to happen internally. The emotional energy doesn't disappear, it builds, slowly, quietly, like water collecting behind a dam. And the longer those feelings remain unspoken, the more pressure develops behind that emotional barrier. For a woman who has been trying to hide how much she misses you, this pressure eventually shows itself in small, almost accidental moments of honesty. Maybe it happens during a deep conversation late at night. Maybe it appears during a moment of laughter. Maybe it slips out when the topic of relationships comes up unexpectedly. But suddenly, she says something that feels more revealing than usual. Something like, "It's strange how some people just stay on your mind." Or, "Sometimes you don't realize how much someone mattered until they're not around." She doesn't say your name in that sentence. She doesn't directly point the words at you, but the emotional weight behind it feels unmistakable. These are emotional leaks, moments where the feelings she has been carefully containing finally find a way out, without fully exposing her vulnerability. And often, after saying something like this, she may quickly change the subject, or laugh it off, or pretend the comment wasn't serious. But the moment already happened. The truth briefly surfaced. Because no matter how controlled a person tries to be, genuine emotions eventually look for expression. And missing someone deeply is not a light emotion. It affects thoughts, it influences behavior, it lingers in memory. But here's the most important thing I want you to understand. Just because someone misses you doesn't always mean they know how to show it. People carry pride, fear, past experiences, All of these things shape how they express or hide their emotions. So sometimes the feelings are real, but the expression is complicated. And understanding that complexity is what separates emotional awareness from confusion. If you've recognized some of these signs in someone you know, it doesn't automatically mean everything will fall perfectly into place. But it does mean something important exists beneath the surface. And sometimes, the deepest feelings are the ones people try the hardest to hide. If this conversation gave you a new way of understanding relationships and human psychology, subscribe to the channel and like the video. Because the more you understand these emotional patterns, the less confused the world of attraction becomes.